The predator test had claimed another victim. Kalen watched from the observation deck as the Thorian candidate was escorted out of the simulation chamber. The Thorian's crystalline exoskeleton, once sharp and radiant, now looked dull and clouded, as if the light inside it had gone out. Shame radiated from the warrior's posture. Its head was lowered. Its movements were slow. No one spoke as the guards led the defeated candidate away. That made 17 failures in 17 days. The galactic militaries had sent their best, their brightest minds, their most decorated hunters and tacticians, warriors who had survived, wars on toxic worlds, who had hunted beasts that could tear armored vehicles apart, and yet none of them had lasted more than 4 minutes inside the testing. Around 4 minutes, that was all it took for the predators to end them. Another one. Bites the dust, muttered Commander Ree. The Vaxian overseer stood beside the observation rail, his tall frame rigid with irritation. His multiple eyes blinked one after another in a precise sequence, a clear sign of mounting frustration among his species. His mandibles twitched as he reviewed the data streaming across the holographic display in front of him. The human is next. The words echoed louder than they should have. Kalen felt the weight of attention crash down on him all at once. A dozen different species turned to look his way. Compound eyes, slitted pupils, bioluminescent lenses, cold measuring stares, curious ones, doubtful ones. A few openly amused. He was the only human in the facility, the only human in a training complex designed to prepare the galaxy's most elite predator hunters. At best, his presence was considered a formality, a diplomatic courtesy. At worst, a joke meant to satisfy political optics. Humans were still new to the galactic stage. Their species had only recently stepped beyond their solar system. Their homeworld was still officially catalogued as a low threat planet, despite its rising technological curve. Dangerous, perhaps, but primitive by galactic standards. Good luck, Cyril said. The Keth officer didn't bother hiding his skepticism. His tone made it clear he expected Kalen to fail just like the others, be faster. Kalen didn't respond. He didn't trust himself to speak. The simulation chamber doors hissed open. A wave of recycled air rolled out, carrying with it the faint scent of ozone and damp soil. Clean stepped forward, crossing the threshold. His standard issue environmental suit suddenly felt thin, fragile, like paper pretending to be armor behind him. The doors sealed shut with a heavy mechanical thud. The chamber was enormous, easily a kilometer across in every direction. The walls and ceiling vanished into projected sky and terrain. Advanced holographic systems reshaped the environment in real time, capable of fooling every known sense. Dense foliage rose around him. Thick vines clung to massive artificial trees. Rocky outcroppings jutted from the ground at strange angles. Patches of swamp water reflected the artificial sunlight. Clearings opened and closed as the terrain subtly shifted. This was not just a test of survival, hidden somewhere. Within this manufactured wilderness were the cubs. The predator test was simple in concept, brutal in execution. Each candidate had to locate and protect 3 juvenile Krishna from a hunting pack of dryal beasts. The DRL came from a death world in the Outer Rim. Apex predators refined by evolution to kill efficiently and without hesitation. Their bodies were covered in reactive armor plating. Their senses were enhanced with thermal vision and motion detection. They hunted in coordinated packs and adapted rapidly to any threat. The cubs, by contrast, were helpless, young, untrained, terrified. Previous candidates had tried everything: overwhelming firepower, advanced stealth cloaks, defensive barriers, tactical positioning, autonomous combat drones. Some had attempted to lure the predators away. Others tried to fortify the cubs' location and hold out until extraction. All had failed. The DRL adapted too quickly. They learned enemy patterns within seconds. By the time most candidates even found the cubs, the predators had already closed in. Kalen carried no heavy weapons. No rifles, no drones, no shield emitters. Only a standard plasma knife hung at his side. He wore no armor beyond the basic environmental suit designed to keep him alive. It's not safe. As the simulation fully initialized and the artificial sun climbed into position, Kalen closed his eyes. He listened. The jungle came alive around him. Insect analogs buzzed and chirped in complex rhythms. Something large howled in the distance, its call echoing through the trees. Water dripped steadily from massive leaves overhead, striking the ground with soft, irregular taps, and beneath it all, barely audible. He heard it. A soft whimper, frightened breathing. Kalen opened his eyes and moved toward the sound. He didn't walk straight toward it. Instead, he took a wide, careful arc, scanning the terrain as he went. He watched the ground, the branches, the shadows. He avoided breaking foliage where possible. Every step was measured. The cubs were in a small clearing ahead. They huddled together beneath a fallen log, their small bodies pressed close. 3 juvenile Krishna, their fur matted with dirt, their eyes wide with fear. They trembled at every unfamiliar sound. The largest cub wore a designation tag, identifying him as Vash. When Kalen stepped into view, Vash growled. It was meant to sound threatening, warning. But it came out thin and shaky, more like a frightened kitten than a guardian. "Hey there," Kalen said softly. He knelt down several steps away, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. "I'm not going to hurt you." Vash's ears flattened against his skull. The other 2 cubs pressed closer to him, instinctively seeking protection from their young leader. Before Kalen could say anything else, he felt it, a subtle displacement of air, a faint vibration through the ground. His muscles tense, 3DRL, approaching. From different directions, standard pack, hunting pattern. They would reach the clearing in less than a minute. Every previous candidate had made the same choice at this moment. They tried to fight. They placed themselves between the cubs and the predators. They deployed shields, or called for extraction early. All had been overwhelmed. Kalen did something different. He reached into his utility belt and pulled out a small container, something he had brought from Earth against regulations. Inside were crushed leaves from a plant native to Southeast Asia, a plant known for its powerful, lingering scent. Kalen had grown up in Earth's jungles, learning from local guides who understood the land in ways no military academy ever taught. "Come here," he whispered. "Trust me." Vash snarled again, but this time there was hesitation behind it. Calculation, okay? A silent choice forming. Stay here and die, or take a chance on this strange human. Kalen rubbed the crushed leaves between his palms and began working quickly. He smeared the pungent mixture onto the cub's fur, onto nearby plants, across the ground itself. The smell was strong, overwhelming. The cubs wrinkled their noses. In disgust, "I know it smells bad," Kalen said quietly, working faster as the vibrations grew stronger. But that's the point. Then he did something that made the observers in the control room gasp. He scooped thick mud from a nearby puddle and began covering the cubs with it, layering it over their bodies to mask their heat signatures. Covered himself as well, pressing cold mud across his suit and exposed areas. He guided the cubs into a tight cluster against the fallen log and buried them partially beneath leaves and debris. "Don't move," he breathed. "Don't make a sound. Breathe slowly." 30 seconds later, the first DRL entered the clearing. Its massive head swung side to side as its sensors activated. Thermal scans, scent analysis, motion detection. All it found was chaos. The crushed leaves flooded its tracking systems with noise. The mud distorted the heat readings just enough to create uncertainty. The beast circled once, then twice. Its packmates joined it. It's equally confused. The cubs should have been here. Their sensors said so, but now there was nothing but conflicting data. The young Krishna trembled beneath Kalen's hands, instincts screaming at them to run, to fight, to do anything, but Vash held still. Minutes passed. 4 of them. Then the Dryal moved on. Only when the jungle fell silent did Kalen activate his beacon. "Extraction requested," said calmly. 3 cubs secured, 0 casualties. The Beacon's light blinked steady and calm in Kalen's palm. For a few seconds, nothing happened. The jungle still looked real. The leaves still trembled. The air still smelled like wet soil and crushed plants. Even the mud on Kalen's gloves felt heavy and cold. The cubs stayed pressed against him, frozen in place like stones that had learned how to breathe. Then the world began to change. At first, it was subtle. The hum of the holographic projectors shifted pitch. The sunlight above flickered like a weak bulb. The shadows under the trees lost their depth, flattening into something artificial. A distant bird call looped twice in the exact same pattern, then cut off abruptly, and then all at once the jungle dissolved. The trees faded into transparent outlines. The vines evaporated like smoke. The swamp water drained into nothing. Ground beneath them turned from dark soil into smooth metallic plating. The air became clean and sterile, free of jungle stink, leaving only one thing behind: mud. Real mud. The leaves Kalen had crushed were still smeared on his hands, their smell still sharp and biting. The cubs were still coated in mud too, their small bodies trembling as the wilderness vanished and bright facility lights returned. They blinked rapidly, as if their eyes could not decide what was real and what was not. The simulation chamber doors hissed. Open Commander Ree stood at the entrance. For the first time since Kalen had arrived at the facility, the vaccine looked uncertain. All of his eyes were wide. His mandibles hung slightly open, as if he had been about to speak and forgot how language worked. Behind him stood several officers from different species, their faces fixed in expressions ranging from disbelief to annoyance to pure fascination. The control room glass above them reflected the glow of holographic screens. Kalen could feel the stare of everyone watching. "How?" Commander Ree began. His voice cracked at the end of the word. It was not anger this time. It was shock, the kind that makes even a proud creature sound small for a moment. His eyes darted to the cubs, then to Kalen, then back to the cubs again, as if he expected them to suddenly vanish. Kalen didn't answer right away. He moved slowly, keeping his hands visible, keeping his body relaxed. He didn't want the cubs to panic. In the raw white light of the chamber, they looked even younger than they had in the jungle. Their fur was clumped with mud, their breathing was fast. The smallest cub's tail trembled uncontrollably. Kalen knelt down and brushed loose debris from their backs with gentle motions. "It's okay," he said softly. "It's over." Ash lifted his head and stared at him. The cub's eyes were still wide, but there was something new in them. Not just fear, not just survival instinct. Something like recognition, something like trust that had not been there before. Kalen helped the cubs stand. Their legs were shaky, but they managed. Vash stayed closest to Kalen, shifting his body slightly, as if forming a shield. Even though Kalen was the one who had protected them, Commander Ree took 2 steps forward, then stopped. He seemed unsure whether he was allowed to enter Kalen's space, as if the human had suddenly become something unfamiliar and dangerous. "You carried no weapons," Commander Ree said. "No drones, no barrier systems. You did not engage the predators. You did not neutralize them." "I didn't need to," Kalen replied. "That only seemed to confuse the vaccine more." One of the other officers, tall, thin being with a smooth silver faceplate, spoke with a sharp tone. "That plant substance was not authorized."
"Ain't you introduced
"External biological material into the chamber?" Kalen nodded. "That's true. You violated the testing rules." The officer continued. Commander Ray's mandibles clicked, and the other officer fell silent. The overseer was still staring at Kalen like he was trying to solve a puzzle with its missing pieces. "The predators searched for 4 minutes," Commander Ree said slowly. 4 minutes. That is the full average survival time of the prior candidates. Yet you remained motionless in their proximity and suffered no injury. Explain." Kalen looked down at his hands. Mud dried in cracks along the gloves. The crushed leaf paste stained the suit's fabric. For a second, he remembered Earth, the heavy green jungles, the sound of rain on broad leaves, the smell of wet bark, the way insects could sound like machines when the air got thick enough. He took a breath. "Where I come from," he said, "we learned a long time ago that sometimes the best way to deal with a predator is not to fight it." The room stayed silent. Even the officers behind Commander Ree stopped moving. It was like everyone had decided the air itself should not interrupt. "You make it think you're not worth the hunt," Kalen continued. "You don't try to outmuscle it. You don't try to outrun it. You don't try to outshoot it. What? Change the rules in its head." Commander Ree tilted his head. Several of his eyes narrowed while the others stayed wide, a sign of intense focus. "You change the rules," he repeated, like he was tasting the idea. Kalen nodded again. "The Dryal have thermal vision. They track heat, movement, and scent. Everyone before me tried to block one sense with technology, but the DRL adapted. They found new angles, new approaches, or instincts in their systems. Worked together." He held up his hands. "So I gave their systems too much." Commander Ray's eyes flicked to the dried leaf stains. "The smell," Kalen said. "On Earth, some plants don't just smell strong. They dominate the air. They stick to skin and fur, overwhelm animals that rely on scent. It's like shouting into someone's ear so they can't hear anything else." "And the mud?" Commander Ree asked. "On Earth, people have used mud to hide from heat-seeking predators for centuries," Kalen replied. "It cools the surface. It breaks the shape. It doesn't erase you, but it makes you unclear." He paused, then added, "Predators don't like unclear. Predators like certainty." The Vaxian stood still for a long moment. His mandibles clicked softly again. Not irritation this time, but something else. Respect, maybe, or at least recognition, that he had underestimated something fundamental behind him. One of the other observers muttered, too quiet for most species to hear, but not quiet enough for the room's microphones. "Primitive tricks." Kalen heard it anyway. He didn't turn toward the voice, stayed focused on the cubs. He reached down slowly and scratched Vash behind the ears, right where the fur met the base of the skull. The cub flinched for half a second, then leaned. Into the touch. The fear in his body loosened like a knot being untied. Kalen could feel it, not in a mystical way, in a simple way. The cub's muscles relaxed. His breathing slowed. He stopped trembling. Vash looked up at Kalen again, and for the first time, his ears lifted slightly instead of flattening. Commander re-watched the interaction closely. "You formed a bond," said voice quieter now. Kalen shrugged. "I didn't plan that." But he knew it wasn't entirely true. Trust mattered in survival. On Earth, it always had. A frightened animal could ruin any plan, no matter how smart. You didn't just hide from the predator. You also kept your own fear from giving you away. The cubs had stayed still because Vash decided to trust him, and that decision was the real victory. Humans didn't always have the best weapons. They didn't always have the strongest armor. They didn't have centuries of galactic military doctrine, but they had something else. Experience with a world that never stopped trying to kill them. Kalen stood up slowly, wiping mud from his gloves with a cloth from his belt. The cloth came away brown and wet, and the smell of the leaves rose again. He could see a few officers subtly recoil, their noses or scent organs reacting. "We've spent thousands of years learning to survive," Kalen said, keeping his voice. "Even not just in wars, not just against each other, but against the planet itself, against heat, cold, hunger, disease, predators, parasites, storms, wildfires. Earth is beautiful, but it is not gentle." He looked at Commander Ree directly. "We know tricks that no advanced civilization ever needed to learn," he continued. "Because once you have shields and drones and perfect sensors, you stop learning the old ways. Stop listening to the forest. You stop reading the ground. You stop thinking like prey." Commander Ray's mandibles clicked again. This time the sound carried a different rhythm. It was almost like a slow acknowledgement. "The predator test is passed," he announced. His voice echoed slightly in the Namdi chamber, bouncing off metal walls where a jungle had been seconds earlier. For a moment, no one moved. It felt like the universe itself needed time to accept that the impossible had happened. Then the control room erupted. Not with cheers. Not exactly. This was a military facility. These were professionals. But there were sharp exclamations, rapid, clicking sounds, startled whispers. Data streams flared across screens. Some officers argued immediately, already trying to explain what they had witnessed in terms their doctrine could accept. Kalen didn't care about the arguments. He looked down at the cubs. The two smaller ones had pressed closer to Vosh again. But their eyes were not as frantic now. They were still scared, but the sharp edge of panic had dulled. Vosh took a step forward and pressed, his head lightly against Kalen's leg. It wasn't a hard push. It wasn't aggressive. It was quiet, a simple gesture. "Thank you." Kalen's throat tightened slightly. He didn't show it, didn't let his face change much. But inside, something shifted. Something that had nothing to do with military tests. And everything to do with what it meant to protect something smaller than yourself? "All right," Kalen murmured. "Let's get you cleaned up." Two attendants entered carefully, wearing sanitized gloves and carrying medical scanners. They approached the cubs with caution, as if afraid sudden movement might break them. The cubs flinched at first, but Kalen stayed close, and that seemed to help. The attendants scanned their vitals. No injuries, no bruising. No shock beyond what could be expected. Their readings displayed cleanly on the monitors. 0 casualties. Commander Reese stared at the numbers for a long moment, then looked back up at Kalen. "Your method," he said, "was not combat." "No," Kalen replied. "It was survival, Commander." Ray's eyes narrowed again, and this time there was something thoughtful in the expression. "You understand predators?" Kalen shook his head slightly. "I understand ecosystems. Predators are part of them." The Voxian seemed to consider that idea like a new tool turning in his hands. The entire program had been built around domination, elimination. The idea that the hunter must be stronger than what it hunts. That fear must be met with force. But Kalen had won without force. He had not beaten the DRL. He had simply made them leave. One of the senior officers stepped forward. Heavy-built creature with plated shoulders and a scarred face. "This test is designed to measure predator hunting skill," the officer said. "Not concealment." Kalen glanced at the officer. "In the field," he said calmly, "the cubs won't care if you kill the predators. They'll care if they survive. And sometimes killing the predator is the loudest thing you can do. Loud gets you killed." The officer opened his mouth, then closed it again. There was no easy counter-argument to that. It's not one that didn't sound like Ego Commander. Ree raised one hand, signaling the room to settle. His posture straightened. "Your results are undeniable," he said. "The objective was achieved. The cubs survived. The predators were denied." He hesitated, then added, "and the method was effective, Vaxian Commander." To use that word without sarcasm was not small. Kalen gave a small nod. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He simply accepted the outcome. Like someone who had already learned long ago that pride could get you killed faster than claws. As attendants guided the cubs toward the exit, Bosch resisted for a moment. His paws dug into the floor. His ears flicked back. He looked up at Kalen like he was asking a question. "Am I leaving you?" Kalen crouched again so he was closer to Vash's eye level. "You're safe now," he said softly. "Go with them." Vash's tail twitched. He hesitated, then stepped forward. Staying close to the attendants, but still glancing back at Kalen with every other step, Kalen watched until the cubs disappeared through the doorway. Only then did he feel the exhaustion hit him. It wasn't physical. Tiredness. His body was fine. His suit had done its job. The mud had protected him from the DRL sensors, but it had also chilled him slightly. Now that the danger was gone, his muscles started to shake, adrenaline leaving the bloodstream. Always felt like a quiet crash. Kalen exhaled slowly. Commander Ree moved closer, reducing the distance between them to just a few steps. The other officers stayed back. Even Zeril, who had wished him good luck with a mocking tone, looked unsettled now. "You brought contraband," Commander Ree said. "Yes," Kalen admitted. "You disobeyed protocol?" Commander Ree continued. "Yes." Commander Ree stared at him. Kalen didn't flinch. He didn't justify. He didn't apologize. Sometimes, in military rooms, the strongest thing you could do was stay calm and let the truth stand. A long silence followed. Then, unexpectedly, Commander Ray's mandibles clicked in a different rhythm. It almost sounded like a short laugh, but not quite. More like a private acknowledgement of irony. The regulations did not account for your cultural knowledge, he said. Kalen tilted his head. Regulations rarely do. For the first time, one corner of Commander Ray's facial structure lifted slightly, a subtle expression of amusement. You will report to debrief, the commander said. Immediately. Gala nodded as he walked with the escort team down. The corridor, he could feel eyes on him from behind observation windows. He could hear whispers through translator implants, most of them not meant for him. He did not fight. He hid. He made them leave. He passed. Some spoke with awe. Some spoke with anger. Some spoke with fear, as if the idea of a human winning with primitive methods made them uncomfortable. Because it did. If the galaxy's strongest hunters could not pass, but a human could, then the galaxy had to admit something it didn't like. That strength wasn't always about better armor. Sometimes it was about knowing how to disappear. Kalen entered the debrief chamber, and the door sealed behind him. A round table waited in the center. Screens hovered above it. Recorded footage of the test paused at key moments. The clearing, the mud, the dryal circling, the cubs frozen under. Kalen's hands. Commander Ree and several analysts sat across from him. Start from the beginning, Commander Ree said, voice firm again, back in command mode. But the respect remained in his posture, even if he didn't say it outright. Sat down. He looked at the frozen image of the DRL on the screen. The Predator's head was turned slightly, its thermal sensors glowing, its body tense. A perfect killing machine halted not by force, but by confusion. He began to speak. He explained his childhood in dense jungle environments on Earth. He explained how hunters and guides learned to move through the forest without announcing themselves, how they understood wind direction, how they used strong scents to mask their trail, how they used mud and water to disrupt body heat, how they learned patience because panic always gave you away. He didn't dress it up. He didn't make it sound heroic. He made it sound practical, because it was. As he spoke, the analyst's expression shifted. Some leaned forward, fascinated. Some frowned, uncomfortable. But they all listened, because they had to. The results forced them to listen. When Kalen finished, Commander Ree sat back slowly. You did not defeat the Dryal, he said. No, Kalen answered again. You denied them. Yes, Commander Ree tapped one claw on the table. This changes our training doctrine. That sentence hit the room like a dropped weight. Several officers exchanged glances. Few looked genuinely alarmed. Change doctrine? Because of one human? Kalen didn't speak. He waited. Commander Ree looked around the room, his eyes sweeping over every face, daring someone to challenge him. No one did. Then he turned back to Kalen. Humans, Commander Ree said, slowly, may be categorized as low threat in terms of military output, but your species possesses survival knowledge that cannot be measured by our current standards. Kalen gave a small shrug. We had to learn it. Commander Ray's eyes narrowed. Because your world was hostile. Kalen nodded. Because we were never the strongest thing there. Another silence. Then Commander Ree said, in a tone that sounded almost reluctant, perhaps we have much to learn from Earth's jungles after all. Kalen didn't smile, but inside something warmed. Not pride. Not arrogance. Just the quiet satisfaction of being understood, even a little. And somewhere down the hall, in a cleaning room filled with warm water and gentle hands, 3 small Krishna cubs were being washed free of mud. Bosch kept turning his head toward the door, ears twitching, as if waiting for one specific scent to return, because a bond had been formed. Not through power, through trust. And trust, Kalen knew, could last longer than fear ever did. Fiend.